The first thing Eli Carter noticed was the steam. It curled out of the hygiene module in slow, ghost-like sheets, fogging the narrow corridor of Outpost Kepler 9. The second thing he noticed was that the automatic privacy lock hadn't engaged. That detail registered a half-second too late, right as the door slid open with a polite chime. Eli stood beneath the water stream, eyes closed, forehead pressed against a cool alloy wall, letting the recycled, heat-loosened muscles stiff from 12 hours of hull diagnostics. He was humming off-key, blissfully unaware that Kepler 9's newest diplomatic guest had just stepped inside. The alien froze. Barely a meter tall, with digitigrade legs and a tail that twitched when startled, the being stared upward in stunned silence. Its skin, smooth, opalescent blue, shifted faintly toward pale white, a reflexive stress response. Large, luminous eyes widened as the creature took in the sight of a human at full height, water cascading over him like a controlled waterfall. Eli opened his eyes. For a long, impossible moment, neither of them moved. Then Eli yelped, slipped on the slick floor, and grabbed the wall to keep from cracking his skull.
Whoa. Door.
Door, he shouted, fumbling for the control panel. The alien squeaked. Not a dignified diplomatic sound, more like a kettle reaching critical pressure. The door slid shut with a hiss, sealing the steam inside and the alien outside. Eli leaned there, heart pounding, water still running, staring at the blank metal panel. "I am never showering again," he muttered. 3 hours later, Eli sat across a table from Ambassador Thierry of the Varelian Compact, trying very hard to pretend that first contact hadn't involved a hygiene module violation. Thierry sat on a levitating cushion adjusted to human table height. Up close, Eli could see the fine bioluminescent veins beneath her skin and the delicate crest that ran from her brow to the back of her skull. She was, as Varelians went, fully adult, something Eli had triple-checked after the initial incident report. "I extend formal apologies," Thierry said, voice translated through a soft harmonic device at her throat. "Our species does not require privacy during cleansing. I was unaware of your customs." Eli cleared his throat.
Yeah.
"Humans are, big on doors." A faint ripple of color passed across her skin. Amusement, he'd learned. Noted. Commander Ruiz sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled, doing her best impression of someone who hadn't laughed herself breathless an hour earlier. "Ambassador, as you know, Technician Carter, is one of our senior systems specialists. He's been assigned as your liaison during your stay." Thierry's eyes shifted to Eli. They lingered. He shifted in his chair. Strictly professional. "From now on." "Of course," Thierry said. Then, after a pause, "You are much larger than anticipated." Eli snorted despite himself. "You should see our toddlers." That earned a startled trill from Thierry and, to Eli's surprise, a laugh from Commander Ruiz. Varelians were explorers, not conquerors. Small-bodied, high-gravity adapted, and famously cautious, they'd survived millennia by observing before acting. Humanity, by contrast, had survived by acting first and apologizing later. The Compact wanted to know how humans operated starships with such thin margins for error, how they endured prolonged isolation without neural drift, how they adapted to alien tech that hadn't been designed for their physiology. Thierry followed Eli everywhere, through engine bays that hummed with contained fusion, along exterior gantries where only a magnetic tether stood between them and the void, into data cores filled with patchwork code written by generations of tired engineers who'd solved impossible problems with duct tape and profanity. She watched. She asked questions. She recorded everything. And sometimes, she stared at Eli like he was a walking anomaly. "You ignore optimal safety parameters," she said once, perched on a railing as Eli recalibrated a sensor array by hand. Yeah, he replied. They're conservative estimates. They are statistically sound. So is me being careful, he said, tightening a bolt. Doesn't mean I won't take a calculated risk if it gets the job done. Tyrion's skin shifted, thoughtful. Your species accepts danger as negotiable. Eli shrugged. We accept that not doing anything can be just as dangerous. That was when the station alarm screamed. Kepler 9 shuddered as if struck by a giant fist. Gravity flickered. Red lights flooded the corridor. Hull breach. Ruiz barked over comms. Unidentified micrometeoroid swarm. Section Gamma. Eli was already moving. That's the auxiliary life support loop. If it fails, Ruiz started. We lose half the station, Eli finished. Thierry scrambled after him, tail lashing for balance as the floor tilted. Technician Carter, protocol dictates evacuation. Protocol can argue with physics later, Eli said, skidding around a corner. They reached the breach zone to find twisted metal, venting atmosphere, and a support strut sheared clean through. Emergency bulkheads had sealed most of it, but the load was shifting. If the strut failed completely, it would cascade. Eli clipped on his tether and stepped toward the gap. Thierry grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength. You will be crushed. Maybe, he said calmly. Or maybe I hold it long enough to weld a brace. You cannot withstand that force. Eli met her eyes. I don't have to withstand it forever. Just long enough. Before she could protest, he wedged himself into position, bracing against the buckling frame. Metal screamed. His muscles burned. Alarms wailed. Thierry stared, frozen in a different way than before.
He was too big.
Too fragile. Too reckless. And he was holding the station together with his own body. Weld unit. Eli shouted through gritted teeth. Thierry moved. Her people were cautious, but they were not cowards. She activated her compact welding tool, designed for delicate repairs, and adjusted the output beyond recommended limits. The tool screamed as it fused alloy meant to be fused in a vacuum forge. Together, impossibly, they stabilized the strut. When it was over, Eli collapsed backward, tether catching him before he floated away. He laughed, breathless.
See?
Negotiable. Medical cleared Eli with a cracked rib and a lecture. The station survived. The compact took notes. A lot of notes. Thierry visited Eli in the infirmary later, standing at the foot of his bed. Her skin glowed softly, a Varelian sign of respect. You endangered yourself without certainty of survival, she said. Yeah, Eli replied. Humans do that.
Why?
He considered the question. Because someone has to go first. If everyone waits for perfect odds, nothing gets done. She nodded slowly. Your species is alarming. He grinned. We get that a lot. Weeks later, when the compact delegation departed, Thierry paused at the airlock. There is a proposal before the council, she said. A permanent exchange program. Varelian observers embedded with human crews. Eli raised an eyebrow. You volunteering? Her crest tilted. I have already accepted. He laughed. Guess I should start locking the shower. A ripple of amusement washed over her. I will endeavor to respect your doors. The airlock sealed. The stars stretched. And somewhere in the vast, watching galaxy, 100 cautious species quietly updated their threat assessments. Not because humans were violent,